Welcome to the Church Brand Guide podcast. My name is Michael. In today's episode, we are talking about digital outreach with my friend Denis Esteban. We are basically talking about a mindset shift that needs to take place in church world, where we're not looking at digital ministry as a marketing tool, but we're really looking at it as outreach. How do we reach people in our city with the tools that we have available to us today? How do we fish for men and women and children using things like Facebook and Instagram and YouTube or whatever else might pertain to the community that you are serving? So Dennis is great at this. He's been doing this for a while where he's helping churches to reach out into the community using the tools that are available online. So in today's episode, we are talking about digital outreach. And a lot of times when I work with churches and we're talking about branding and websites and what that all entails and how much the cost is and how much the investment will be and the time and energy and effort to get this right, we basically pivot the mindset towards outreach. Hey, this is really about outreach. How can your church reach people who are not currently part of the church? And it's not just about being part of a church, although that's a good thing. It's about the gospel. Like, how can we reach more people with the gospel? Because we know when people come to your church, they're going to experience the gospel. And we want more of that to take place. That's my passion. That's what I want. And it's why I did communications for a long time in church world. I was communications director in a large mega church and also in a tiny church plant. And today I do that as a volunteer and at the church plant that we have down here in South Florida. So if you're a communications person at your church, this episode's going to help you just to shift your mindset a little bit. Maybe just instead of thinking about marketing, you're thinking about outreach and how do we use the tools that we have to share Jesus through our ads that we put out there on Google or on Facebook or on YouTube, whatever platform you are using. Now, it may not be like obvious and blatant, like, hey, you should give your life to Jesus. That's probably not going to work. In fact, I would recommend not doing that. But how can we still show Jesus through what we're doing? It's outreach. Again, it is marketing. Yes, we are building a website and giving information and all that stuff for marketing purposes, but we are also trying to lift up the gospel, lift up that message of hope that we have, that we enjoy, so that other people may come and experience it as well. So in today's episode, Dennis is going to unpack this mindset for us. And he's also going to give us some tips on how to do this really well. So let's get to the interview with Denis Esteban. Hey, Dennis, how's it going?
How's it going, Michael?
Thanks for hopping on. Dennis is a amazing friend who's basically been working with me for a little bit, and I thought I'd have him on. He has a lot of experience in church world. So, Dennis, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background in serving the church?
Yeah, well, my background, with serving the church started, many years ago. But before I came into the church space, I was actually in a nonprofit space. So I founded a nonprofit that essentially went from one club in Boca Raton, Florida, to 1,000 clubs across the United States. And mainly, part of the growth of that was due to press. So I was introduced to almost the marketing world, and I saw how marketing can help spread ideas like wildfires. So stepping into the church space, I was part of a church plant called Oceanside. And in that church plant, I really served as the communications director. At least that's what I started off as. And eventually I moved into the executive pastoral, but really I was wearing many hats. But throughout that time, and even before then, I started to realize how outreach, digital outreach, can help bring more people to church and help fulfill the Great Commission,
All
essentially.
right. Yeah. So that was one of the big things that I took away from you in our conversations was this idea of a digital outreach. I just love your way of thinking about that. So why don't you take a moment and unpack when you say digital outreach, what do you mean?
So nowadays, Michael, We have over 80% of Americans utilizing social media. So what we must realize is this social media is no longer a posting platform, but it's a mission field. So as believers, as ministries, we can't just be doing marketing, we have to do outreach. So here's what I mean. Marketing is very promotional and it's trying to get people to do something, whereas outreach, it adds value to the end user. And when you add value to the end user, what you're trying to do is you're trying to capture their attention and point them to Jesus. So really my mission in everything that I do is how do we leverage digital mediums to fulfill the Great Commission? Actually, the first week in the church plant, in our growth track, which would be our next steps class, I asked the question, who here found us on social media? And 20 people in that room raised their hand. And they said the way that they got connected to our church was through social media. So what we have to realize, the opportunity for ministries today is you can reach people way beyond your city with the life-changing message of the gospel. So for ministries, it's time for us to expect people to be where we are, and we have to go to them, which is the opportunity that social media allows us and gives us.
So is there one channel with social media that works better than anything else, or what's your approach?
So my approach for social media, what I tell the churches that I work with, and just so you understand, for people who manage social media or their communication directors, they often wear a lot of different hats. And because they wear different hats and they're bouncing around from task to task, one of the things that often gets neglected is social media, because they just can't do it all. So my approach when it comes to social media, I tell them to pick one platform, because you don't want to go wide, but you want to go deep. So by picking one platform, and the platform that I mostly use for the churches that I work with is Instagram, but Facebook still has the most reach, and Facebook still has the most users. So what I like to do, or the strategy that I give my clients, is let's utilize Instagram. And specifically nowadays, we're transitioning into Instagram Reels. Let's utilize Instagram and cross post from Instagram to Facebook. Now, there are some people that don't recommend cross posting, but what we do for our ministries, once we create our schedule, we tell them to cross post, and we see that it works for them. We see that they get engagement, and they really only have to focus on that one channel.
That's great. So with that focus on Instagram, what is the goal? Like, what are you trying to accomplish?
What for me, when we think about Instagram, the first thing that we want to do is add value to people, right? A lot of times we've used social media as a tool to promote our ministry. The shift that all of us as ministries need to make is we need to see social media as a tool to do ministry. So the question becomes, how do you do ministry on social media? So for me, I like to first start with value, because if we believe that attention is the currency of today, then if we want people to pay attention, we have to add value in a way so they can give us their attention. Now, when they give us their attention, our first and most primary goal is to point them to Jesus. I believe it's not to point them to a service, it's not to point them to an event, it's not to point them to an outreach, but ultimately it's to point them to Jesus. Now, I do believe that, yes, when somebody gets in the room, yes, when somebody gets in the service, yes, when somebody gets in a community group and they experience community and they experience Jesus, their life will change. But first and foremost, what we want to show people is not our pastor. The first person we want to show people is Jesus. So the way that we do that is, I always tell our ministries that we work with, is let's communicate the why behind what we do. So if we're talking about community groups, our language is, hey, we believe that we're better together. You weren't created to do life alone. If we're talking about next steps or growth track, we'll say something like, come discover your divine design. Here's what the Bible says about you. right? So we're starting off with value first. And then really the goal after adding that value is we want to take them through our engagement journey. For us, that engagement journey is, how do you take them from a stranger to a spectator? So a stranger is someone that has no clue who you are. They found you online. So we want to take them to a stranger to a spectator. That spectator can either be online or in person. From being a spectator, we want to take them from being a spectator to a collaborator. Maybe they are, they're in the mission somehow. They're showing up to an event. They're showing up to an outreach event. But then from that participator, we call it a collaborator. Like we are co-laboring for the gospel. And then the last step in our funnel is what we call our champion. So now this person came in, they might have gotten into a community group. They got into the next steps class, and now they're serving on a team and they're making a difference. And so every single thing that we do and we communicate on social media should take users through that engagement journey. The problem with most ministries is we make posts, but we actually don't have a process. In the marketing space, in the business world, this would be called a funnel, right? We don't have a process that we take people through. So we're making social media posts with no tracked outcome.
Yeah, that's really good. I found that to be very true. That's one of the big things that I help to implement when I work with my clients is process.
Right.
What is the goal? What are we trying to do? What are the steps? I love your 4 steps: stranger to spectator, spectator to collaborator, collaborator to champion. And when you take a look at that and you break down what you're doing in that perspective, it really helps you to create a mechanism to move people, down that road. So I love that.
Right.
What are some of the tools that you recommend that churches can use to either create or post, or just any sort of tool that you found really helpful that churches just need to know about?
Well, the first tool, first and foremost, as it relates to design, right? I believe that beautiful design helps capture attention. But for most churches, if you are a volunteer, you're probably not a designer, right? So one of the best tools that I can recommend is Canva. Canva is something that most churches should be familiar with. They have a pro plan, but they also have a free plan. One of the things that we have is actually we have a list of Canva. We have a list of Canva templates that ministries can use. And they can just find that at hallelujahsocial.com. But we have a list of those Canva templates that churches can use. And the best thing about Canva templates is when we create content for ministries, we always want to create content that's scalable. So we never like to create one-off pieces of content, but we like creating content that we can repeat over time. So let's say if we're doing a Sunday invite, we want to duplicate that Sunday invite, create different variations. So now instead of having one invite, we have the next 8 invites for the next 8 Saturdays that we post those invites. The next tool that I would recommend is a site, actually. It's called Unsplash, unsplash.com, unsplash.com. Unsplash.com. The beauty of unsplash.com, it gives you the opportunity to get free photos, unlicensed photos that your ministry can use. You can use them in your graphics. I don't recommend using them in your social media, but a tool like Unsplash is such a great tool for churches to use. And then the next tool that churches can use is a tool that they're probably not familiar with, but they're very close to. It's Facebook Creator Studio. With Facebook Creator Studios, ministries can actually schedule out their post. They can schedule out their post content. So then they don't have to worry about posting every single day. So those are really the 3 main tools that I recommend for ministries to get started. And these 3 tools can really help push forward the mission. It can really push forward what we're trying to do utilizing social media.
That's great. So with those tools, I think it's a great way for people to start by creating through Canva and maybe Unsplash, using some of those photos, and then having that ability to post through that Creator Studio with Facebook. What's the best way for people if they want to connect with you? I know you started a company that is producing stuff for clients. But why don't you talk a little bit about your company? Basically, it's kind of a holy discontent. There's a book that Bill Hybels wrote a little while ago, and it just talks about something that bothers you, and so you to the point where you have to do something about it.
Right.
So why don't you just take a brief moment to talk about what you created to help churches do this?
Yeah, and the mission of our company is simply what I said before, is we're leveraging digital mediums to fulfill the Great Commission. So with that, we have an unlimited design subscription that we do for ministries. We have an unlimited video subscription. We help manage their social media. But what we say is we're not an agency and we don't do marketing. We're part of your team and we do outreach. And to find us, we're pretty easy to find. It's just hallelujahsocial.com. If you don't know how to spell hallelujah, Google it. But it's just hallelujahsocial.com, and we're on Instagram. Our one channel is just Hallelujah Social. That's where you can find us.
Excellent. So Dennis and I met up a little while ago. He told me about his vision, his passion, and this idea of digital marketing. Or digital outreach. Instead of thinking about it as marketing, as a church, you can think about it more as outreach. And in the past, I've found that this has been really a critical mindset shift with a lot of my clients that I've worked with. Whenever we take a look at it as not marketing but outreach, how can we reach more people that aren't currently part of our church? Then we become more innovative as church leaders. In fact, one of the clients that I had, they were able to, I guess, even raise funds, so to speak, towards outreach that they then put towards, hey, having a better website, having a better social media presence, having that photographer come in and take some great photos, those type of things. So just a great mindset shift. And Dennis, thanks for sharing that. I think it's just a critical piece that people that are in the church world need to understand, that this is not just like marketing and not pushing stuff on people. It's really about serving people and adding value to them.
That's right. That's right.
All right, Dennis. Well, hey, thanks again for coming on, and we'll have you back on future episodes. You're just full of knowledge. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on today's episode. Hopefully that was a lot of value, helping you understand, getting your mind around this idea of digital outreach. It's one of those things that I think a lot of churches that I work with, once we get that idea of like what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish with like a new website, it's outreach. It's just a aha moment for a lot of my clients as we think about it from that perspective. So hopefully that's one of the things that you're doing as well. If you're a communications person in your church, maybe help your team, help your leadership, your pastor, your board, anybody that's in leadership at the church, to begin to understand what you're doing as part of outreach. It's about us getting outside of our walls and reaching people where they are, inviting them to come and be a part of what God is doing through the church. So it's a very important thing that you're doing. I want to encourage you to keep on getting better at it. And this podcast is here to help you do that, to help you get further, faster, to cut through the noise and reach more people in your community with the gospel message that's so important. Thanks again for joining us. Remember to check us out on churchbrandguide.com. There's a free checklist for branding, a branding checklist that's there if you don't have that already. There's also a bunch of free resources. We try to inspire you on that website as well with brands that we have created, so you can take a look at what we have done and how we've worked with churches from all different types of backgrounds all across the country, and just be inspired by it. Just get a look at what logos or maybe some graphics we've created or websites we've created to help these churches to accomplish the vision that God has given to them. So check it out on the churchbrandguide.com website. I'd love for you to subscribe to this podcast if you haven't done that already. Leave a review or just rate the podcast so more people can find it. I would really appreciate that. Hey, and listen, if you are thinking about a new website for your church, I would love to have a talk with you. Again, you can go to churchbrandguide.com. and schedule a time. Let's just get on a phone call, see what I might be able to do to help you with that. We love to build websites that are extremely powerful for churches and for ministries. That way you can scale it. It's infinitely scalable. So we like to use WordPress and customize it for your needs. On top of WordPress, we use a thing called Divi. The Divi Builder, which allows you to do like drag and drop type stuff to make it easy for updates to take place. So we really set you up for success. We have that branding conversation, and then we built out a really great online platform to help your ministry to grow and to flourish and help people take next steps with you. So again, I'd love to have a conversation if that's something that you are thinking about. At the very least, let's just ask some questions, get some answers, get some tips and tricks. I'd love to just add as much value as I can. And if it ends up that we work together, that's awesome. But let's just have that conversation. So book a time through the churchbrandguide.com website, and let's see if we are a good fit. Well, hey, thanks again for joining us on this episode, and we'll see you on the next episode.